I just want to make sure, can you guys see the slides here? I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, we can now.
Yeah, okay, you're good. Thank you. Yes, so thank you, Jenna. And I'm here today with Lori to talk about employment in Oxford County. So I want to give you guys a brief overview of overall employment and stats in the county, the different places you can work, the different industries that are available, and how to work safely during COVID-19, how everything's reopening, and your rights as an employee. And then we'll end with questions. So I will present for probably about 20 to 30 minutes. Don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to give you the most important info here. So yeah, so just some more info about Leeds. I know Lori, you touched on this briefly here. So yeah, Leeds is a not-for-profit employment and skills development agency. So since 1986, started it in London, Ontario. We have been providing specialized services for people with disabilities or employment-related barriers throughout southwestern Ontario. So we provide specialized supports for the youth program that I work with, the volunteering. You do not have to have a disability or a barrier to be approved for those services. So I work with all kinds of youth. So in Oxford County, Stratford, Strathroy, Owensound, and St. Thomas, and Sarnia, yeah, we have the Youth Leadership Development Program. So you can check it out. We've got some Instagram pages. You can see what we're up to there. So some goals of this presentation. I want to talk about Oxford County employment stats and where things are maybe going in the next 10 years. What is open, what's not open right now, how things are going to be reopening, how to work safely, your employment rights, and then we'll talk about some additional resources. And just a quick disclaimer there, employment rights info is provided as general information only, is not intended to replace legal counsel. So there's a lot of official info you can find on the government websites, which I think is great. They're constantly updating that, and a lot of this information is current now, but as we all know, everything is changing fairly quickly. So let's take a look at Oxford County. Here we have all the kind of townships, the areas here. Woodstock is kind of in the middle, and then all the other counties there. So quite a large area. Yeah. So an overview of the employment sector here. For 2016, this is the latest data that was available. You see it was about 57,000 jobs available, and most of these in the next 30 years are expected to grow from migration over from the greater Golden Horseshoe area, so like Waterloo, GTA. So a lot of people will be moving in for moving to kind of family households and bringing work with them. So here's some more stats. I love stats here, so you'll see I'm not going to go too in depth on this slide, but you can see most of the growth was in Ingersoll and Woodstock in the last little while. So, okay, I just want to ask briefly, and maybe we can talk about this at the end since I know everyone's on mute, but what's your experience working or career paths available in Oxford County, and or have you worked on a farm lately? So I know kind of a running thing that there's a lot of farms in the area, which I think there are. Next, let's take a look at some types of employment you can find in Oxford County. So what does Oxford County have for employment or careers? What's the biggest kind of industry? You'll see construction, manufacturing, trades, the biggest thing here, but there's a little bit of everything. So there's quite a lot of variety in Oxford County. So if you want to stay in the region, I encourage you to find what is local to you and find how you can develop your career in the area. Some more stats here. You can see the agriculture, construction. This is right from StatsCan. And right here, you can see the greater Golden Horseshoe to the right of Oxford County. It's kind of where the area is seeing a lot of migration here. So this is an important stat here I thought I would highlight, which I already kind of talked about. So the Oxford County is continuing to experience some out migration of young adults going to where their skills can be used in jobs, but it'll be balanced out by people moving in from that area. So in the next 30 years, yeah, definitely there's going to be a lot of growth in the region. So it's going to be an exciting place to live, and there's a lot of great communities. Oh, someone's on the chat here. Never mind. Okay, so next up, I want to talk about working safely and what type of employment is available as of right now. So we're in stage 1 of the Ontario government's reopening plan. So there's a lot of changes. We'll talk about that. So jobs that are hiring will be changing as the province reopens. Some workplaces are still hiring even now. I know that the Canadian economy, I was looking at the stats there, and 3 million jobs were lost in the past couple months. National unemployment is pretty high, but you can still find work if you're looking for it, and hiring is still happening. It's just happening at a slower pace. So yeah, so these will be slowly coming back, and then when employers are back to normal, everything's reopened, you're going to see a lot of hiring. So this is a great time to work on your resume, get everything ready, cover letter, look at what careers or jobs you might want to apply to. Yeah, there's the reopening framework for the government. Stage 1. So just a note on safety, and we'll talk about that more in a bit. Any businesses that are open must follow some safety guidelines from the government. So safe workplaces must have a safety plan that promotes and adheres to strict sanitation standards, physical distancing. So there are some guidelines to reopening and guidelines that businesses will follow. These businesses are considered essential and are included in phase 1. You may have heard golfing is reopening, any retail with a storefront. So here are some jobs that I found very recently, just the last couple of days, that I found posted online that might be interesting to you guys. Some farm labor jobs, crew people, customer service reps. So there's still jobs being posted, and I think the main message is to, if you're looking for a part-time job or summer work, just keep applying, because you might need to apply more than usual just to get a call back. So just keep applying, and don't get discouraged if you are looking for work right now. So how to work safely, and what are your rights as an employee? So you see this image of Costco is probably from much before the pandemic. You don't see any distancing there. So support for workers. Recently, a lot of workplaces have been developing work safe procedures. You can see the plexiglass there. I'm sure we all remember going to the grocery store. They didn't have the plexiglass, and then they did. So a lot of workplaces are making things safer for people, providing masks and gloves. And employers have the right to take precautions, or they have to take precautions to keep people safe. And a note on personal protective equipment. So you guys may have heard that term PPE recently. It's basically just gloves or masks. And once your employer trains you on how to use it and gives it to you as available, it also becomes your responsibility. So it's the employer's right to give you the training and the resources and the equipment, and then it becomes partly your responsibility to use it safely. So, and I've included a number down at the bottom there. So if you are working right now and you have any concerns about your workplace that you'd like to report, there's a health and safety contact center, which you can do so at. So this is a funny slide here. Do employers have to buy personal protective equipment? Yes, they do. So if employees run the risk of becoming infected, the employer must provide personal protective equipment. And we've heard a lot of stories about this recently with nurses and healthcare workers having shortages. So I'm sure you've seen that in the news maybe. So what is your right to refuse work if you think it's unsafe? You must contact your manager, let them know, ask for additional clarification and training. And then if it's still unsafe, you have the right to refuse work. And what is unsafe work though? So if you feel like there's a danger to health, safety, to yourself or others, you have the right to refuse. Yeah. Can you refuse work just because of pandemic? No, you can't, but you have to demonstrate a reasonable link between a pandemic and that you're at a risk for injury. Yeah. And then I just included this for when you might not have that right, and that's just for some workplaces like firefighters, police officers, like they're exposed to the kind of danger in their daily duties, including healthcare workers. So you might not have the full employment rights in those situations, but in most other professions, yes, you do. Yeah. So even when people were deemed essential service workers, they can still refuse if you have reasonable grounds to believe that things are unsafe. So yeah, I found this online, so I thought this was interesting. Which we've heard things recently about employers having employees that might refuse work, and there are some situations where that might happen. So if an employee is concerned about contracting COVID-19, or if they're particularly vulnerable, or if there's a confirmed case or a contact case at the workplace, you'll see employees refusing work. Okay, so what happens after you refuse work at work? You must follow the reporting protocol, and then the employer must follow the health and safety regulation or legislation. I'm not going to go over too much of this slide, but this is how investigations work. So you got the first stage and then second stage. Most of this will go to the Ministry of Labor, and first it'll be try to resolve it within the workplace. And you can't be disciplined for work refusal. So that's an important point. A lot of people, you might get scared of doing that, so refusing work, but employers cannot harass or intimidate or discipline you based on a work refusal. So you're safe. Yeah, and if you think you're sick and you're working right now, you do have a duty to inform your employer, or if you've recently traveled outside of the country. Probably not much travel lately, but if you think you've been in contact with anyone who's sick, you have a duty to tell your employer, which you can do so by many methods of not in person. So you can call, text, email. Okay, so I just want to talk about some additional supports for workers here. You can see there is actually some emergency childcare, which is available for healthcare frontline workers, and then mental health and addiction support. So this is an essential service. They haven't closed. If you're feeling anxious or any other mental health symptoms, there are services you can access online or by phone. And most recently, a lot of these services are getting really, really good at delivering things online. So, we might have a lot of online services when things are fully back open, which is great because it makes it a lot more convenient for everybody to access. Not everyone can go out to, a particular place to get those services. So being able to do that virtually is great. So at this point, I just want to pause for any questions or comments. You can throw them in the chat there if you want. And then I'll keep an eye on the chat here, and then we will field some of your questions in a moment. And Lori will as well. Thank you, Lori. So some resources for job searching. My suggestions would be, in this time, you got a lot of time right now to get that resume and cover letter up to date. And if you're looking for jobs, use your network. Got a network. Look for postings in person and on websites. I've driven by countless workplaces that have a help wanted kind of poster, so that's out there. Keep applying to jobs that interest you. You might need to apply a lot. 10 applications might get you one interview. So kind of a general rule there. And kind of a trend I'm noticing as well is there's a few places where you can work part-time that might not offer full-time. So this is a trend where a lot of workplaces are offering a lot of part-time roles, but you may not see a lot of full-time kind of 9 to 5, 40-hour work weeks as have been traditionally found. Here's some additional resources. So a lot of the info that I found today, and this is just based off Oxford County reports and government websites. So a ton of more info out there. For career exploration, yes. So anyone who's talked to your guidance counselor, for sure, you know, we have all these great kind of career exploration resources out there. Use them. If you're still kind of considering where to go after high school, you know, you have a wider range of options. I would suggest to look at a kind of like a short-term plan, medium-term, and then long-term. I know it is super tough to do, but just have a general idea where you might want to go. And volunteering, I can't stress it enough. Yes, if you want to volunteer, get out there, get involved. It's a great way to get out in the community, get some network, and meet people that might help you later. So, you know, you might give your time, give back, and later on you might find, oh, I might want to work at that place because I've gained some skills and experiences at that role, which has generated a lot of things I can put on my resume or talk about in interviews, because a lot of interviews right now are going to situational based questions. So instead of giving you a situation and say, how would you respond to this? They'll ask you, like, how did you deal with a tough situation in the past? Or can you tell me about a time when you were tested and your self-confidence had to fix a situation? So a lot of competency based interviews. So you need those experiences to talk about when you're in job interviews. I think that's all I have there. Yeah. So thank you. That's my employment presentation. If you need any more information or resources, feel free to reach out. And of course, Jenna is going to post this online so you can find some of those links. So now I'll open it up for any questions or comments or anything, any additional things you would like me to talk about. Or
Awesome. I'm just going to end recording so people don't have to worry about questions being recorded. And thank you so much, Alex and Leeds, for putting on the presentation for us.
Thank you.